What's going on, everyone? My name is SiahZ and welcome back to our updated critical damage mid Exile build. After the patch was released yesterday, I went ahead and tested and swapped some stuff in the passage tree, got some gems around, and overall swapped some of our soul cores that we're actually running in the build, and we are now doing more than 33 million damage in our bossing spec. We have a way better clear, and we have a much better survivability into the build, and overall it just feels a lot better to play. I'll be covering all the changes throughout this video, but before we get into that, if you guys do enjoy the build guides or you're liking what I'm doing on the channel, you consider hitting that like and subscribe button. That currently is the best way to support me, plus it really does help with the YouTube algorithm. I should also be live on YouTube and Twitch right now. The link for that will be in the description as well as the comment section of the video. Alright, let's get right into it. The first thing we're getting into is the gear. So we're still running the same bows we were previously. We're still just looking for around a 300 fizz DPS bow with really good crit chance and crit damage. And the most important stats are that crit chance and crit damage. It adds a ton more DPS overall. If you can get one that has a higher crit damage bonus than I do, you will overall see a lot better DPS. You don't really need to have insanely high fizz DPS on this. You can get away with, like I said, a 300 or even like a 280, but we really need to have a good crit chance and a good crit damage bonus added onto the base of this bow here. It's going to add a lot more DPS overall, so just keep that in mind when you're looking at a bow. For a quiver, we want to look for a visceral based quiver. This is going to add critical hit chance on the implicit, and overall is one of the best to stock quiver bases we can get. But we want to look for cold damage, increased projectile speed, and or increased damage with bows. Crit chance and crit damage on the quiver is what we're mainly looking for. Then if we can get mana per enemy killed, that's kind of like the cherry on top. But we can easily roll this on one piece of our jewelry as well. Just try to make sure that you're getting at least 15 to 20 mana per enemy killed, and this should solve all mana issues while clearing. For our helmet, running the Expert Feathered TR, it's just a really good ES based helmet, trying to look for high life and keeping that res cap. Same thing with our boots, the Expert Silk Slippers. They're just really good ES based boots. We're trying to look for that 35% increased move speed, high life, and just making sure that we're keeping res capped. For our gloves, we're still running the Hands of Wisdom and Action gloves. These are the best in stock gloves currently for the build. They just add a ton more DPS and attack speed overall. Plus they add int and dex, which is one of the two main stats we revolve around. So it just adds more DPS overall. If you can get one that's corrupted with damage penetrates lightning resist, it'll be even better. But obviously you don't need to have one corrupted with that. But overall, get the gloves as soon as you can, as you will definitely see a huge DPS increase when you actually have them on. For our body armor, running the Expert Wayfarer jacket now. This just adds chaos resistance on the implicit. The Expert Wax jacket is still good. You can look at both bases to see, but the Wayfarer is going to be more premium because it has that chaos resist on the implicit and allows us to have a higher chaos resistance before. So looking for high evasion and energy shield, plus looking for spirit and still keeping res cap. That's what we're currently looking for on a body armor. For our accessories, we're now running a headhunter for our belt. This basically just makes it to when we kill a rare monster, we gain its modifiers for 20 seconds, which when we're doing juice T16 breaches, it just adds a lot of overall damage, survivability, move speed, all that, and just makes it honestly a lot better on clear because we're killing so many rares and getting their modifiers. Obviously, you do not need this belt. This does not make or break the build. This is more of a luxury item and just makes overall the clearing feel a lot better. But all yesterday I was streaming the build without Headhunter and it was still feeling absolutely amazing. So you don't need it. You can just sock it in a different belt here with like reses, life, whatever you want. But obviously if you can get a Headhunter, go ahead and grab it. We're now running 2 unset rings because this adds more skill slots to the build and allows us to throw in like Wind Dancer for more survivability and stuff like that. For one of the unset rings, you want to look for lightning damage, high lightning damage, and then look for int and keeping res cap. Then on the other one, we want to look for high cold damage, keeping int with res cap, and that's what we're looking for in jewelry. For our amulet, I have a lapis amulet, but if you can look for one that's a lunar or solar amulet, that'll be really good as well. We're now looking for increased max energy shield, as this adds a ton more ES overall to the build. Rather than just having flat energy shield on the necklace, we still want to look for high spirit because we need 190 spirit to run all of our reservations, so keep that in mind. Also, if you can roll a +3 level to all projectile skills, that'll add a ton more overall DPS to the build. But do keep in mind that the more levels you have into a skill, the higher overall mana cost it is going to be to actually use said skill. For a back bar, we're still running the Widow Hail Crude Bow, looking for a 270% increased bonuses gained on it. And then for a quiver, we're looking for a +2 level to all projectile skills. And the reason why we want a 270 is because this will add another level out of our quiver. So that's why we're looking for that. Now getting into our gems, I'm going to cover the boxing section and then we can go into the clear section. So from Exile, we're running super critical, inevitable critical, adds a lot of crit chance and crit damage overall to it. Elemental focus for more elemental damage, primal ardent for more weapon elemental damage. It just adds more DPS to the skill. And then running hourglass. Now it does add a 10-second cooldown, but it adds 40% more damage to the skill, which adds a ton more DPS. And overall, we're doing so much damage that 10-second cooldown we don't have to worry about because we're one-shotting every boss in the game pretty much. So we can just go ahead and run that. and then just get a lot more DPS to it. For lightning arrow, we're running martial tempo for more attack speed. We're running strip away because this will give increased effect of our exposure. Then we're running lightning exposure to inflict it on shocking an enemy. We have overcharge to increase the magnitude of shocks we inflict. And then we have lasting shock to increase the shock duration, because overcharge actually reduces the shock duration, and then this kind of balances each other out. But overall, this will allow us to achieve that 97% shot effectiveness that we're looking for the build to give it a lot more DPS. Then we're running Bone Storm. This adds a flat physical damage debuff taken from next attack, and that can stack up to 20 projectiles. This adds a lot more DPS overall to our Magnetic Salvo in the bossing section, and we only use this skill when we are bossing, so do keep that in mind. But we were supporting that with physical mastery, so we get another level into it, because Bone Storm scales really well with levels, and the higher the overall level of it, the higher the overall flat physical damage that the enemy is going to take from the next attack. That's why we do that. Then we run Arcane Tempo to have more attack speed with it. We run Life Tap because the mana cost of it is insanely high, so I'd rather just pay with life. It allows us to just have a lot better mana sustain and pop all of our skills without worry. And then we're running Ricochet, so this way the projectiles that don't hit the enemy, they hit terrain, they have a chance of coming back and hitting them, which, you know, just adds more of that stacks on the enemy to get more damage on a Magnetic Salvo. Then we're running Lightning Rod with Consecrated Effect to have more area damage, plus the less AoE on it is actually good because this allows more shotgunning of Magnetic Salvo. Then we have Scatter Shot to call more projectiles down. Then we have Lightning Pen to penetrate that lightning resist with close combat for more attack damage on our lightning rods. Then we get into our reservation skills. We're running Grim Feast because this allows us to overflow our max energy shield, basically meaning that once we kill an enemy, we pick up remnants and we can get twice our energy shield, so we can go from a 1500 pull all the way up to a 3k pull, which is really nice. Then we're running Clarity support in there for increased mana regeneration rate, just helps out a little bit. Plus we have the Spirit to throw it in, so why not? Then we get into our Herald tech. So for Herald of Thunder, we're running Cold Infusion to gain 25% of damage as extra cold, which is nice. Ice Bite, so when it kills a frozen enemy, it'll actually get more attack damage as cold. Glaciation to have more freeze build up, and then Lightning Mastery for another level into it. Now the reason why we run Cold and Herald of Thunder is because Herald of Thunder can't shock, but it can freeze, so this will allow us to call the lightning bolts down. It'll freeze enemies, and then it'll pretty much shatter them sometimes because it'll do so much damage, or we'll just shatter them when we hit them with an arrow, and then that'll explode into Herald of Ice. And then we do the same thing basically with Herald of Ice. We're running lightning damage on here because it can shock, but it can't freeze, so this just allows Herald of Ice to chain explode, shock enemies, and then we can get Herald of Thunder back really quickly. And this kind of has like a loop into each other, so that's why we do that. So we're running Lightning Infusion and Herald of Ice to get more attack damage as lightning. Magnified Effect to have more AoE on the Herald of Ice explosions. Enervate to get basically 35% more attack damage as lightning damage, allows us to have a better chance of shocking. And then Cold Pen to penetrate cold damage when we actually do proc those explosions. Then we're running Cast on Shock instead of Cast on Crit now. The main reason for that is Cast on Crit was proccing Eye of Winter too much. We don't use Eye of Winter for damage, we just use it for that critical weakness it inflicts, so we don't need it to be proccing so much. So that's why I went from a Cast on Crit to a Cast on Shock. It allows it to proc it enough to get advantage of it, especially on our bossing section, because we're doing so much DPS right now, we don't really ever need it in our clear spec, but for our bossing section we do need it, and this just allows it to proc it for that, but not over proc it to the extent that it's siphoning so much mana. So we're supporting that with Energy Retention to have a chance to refund the energy cost, to proc it more often, Inspiration to have less cost to proc it, and then Impetus to have increased energy gain to actually proc Eye of Winter. Then since we're running double on set rings, we can now run Wind Dancer, so we threw that in. Before we were around a 48% evasion, and now we're at a 69% base, which is absolutely massive and adds overall a ton more survivability into the build. We're still running Conductivity because this basically will curse enemies and they will take negative 35 to lightning resist, which lowers their lightning res, which is nice. We're doing Heightened Curse to have increased effect of it. We're doing Curse Ground to basically make it into an AoE instead of a curse like a mark. This allows it to basically, if enemies are standing inside of that AoE, they'll get cursed with it, which is really nice to preset up for bosses. And then we're doing Ritualistic Curse to have more area effect to it. Then for our last skill, we're running Voltaic Mark. This just allows us to have more chance to shock and increase effectiveness of our shock. So this allows us to achieve that 97% shock effectiveness. And then we're just running Persistence in here to have more skill effect duration of it. And then for the clear section of the build, you just want to swap some stuff off Magnetic Salvo and swap some gems in. I usually use the bow shots, which are like the default attacks as like placeholders to actually hold these gems in. But basically you want to Heft on Lightning Arrow, which will give more max physical damage. Primal Ardament for more weapon elemental damage. Long shot, this just allows us to have more attack damage the further the projectile travels, which we're off-screen clearing, we're shooting at a distance, so we always are getting full effect of this. Then we're running ambush to have more critical hit chance against enemies that are on full life. Allows us to one-shot them a lot more. Then obviously still running martial tempo for that increased attack speed, but that's basically the jewels you want to run on the clear section of lightning arrow. Now that that's all done, we can get into the tree changes. So for Ascendancy, we're still running point blank. Just gives us a lot more damage, especially for Magnetic Salvo. Gathering Winds to gain Tailwind on skill use. Endless Munitions to fire an additional skill. And obviously Wind Ward to get that 3% less damage taken per Tailwind, which is nice because the max Tailwind stacks will have 30% less damage taken on our first hit, which adds a lot more survivability overall to the build. Now I did swap the tree a little bit, so up here we were taking these nodes previously, but obviously looking back on it and going into it, these were the same amount of points used as going here. The reason for that is because we were going down for our own instincts, and then we were spending 2 more points to grab Vile Wounds, so we were only getting some more stats basically for the same amount of points, but we were losing DPS. So I decided to swap back to the original one to get a lot more DPS overall to the build now. But going down, we're taking the Fletcher node, obviously to get increased bonuses gained from our quiver. We're going to keep going down and we're taking Extended Deliver because this just adds a lot more DPS to our Magnetic Salvo and our bossing section. Still taking Catalyst for the increased elemental damage with attacks. We're dropping this Jewel Socket node and this previous node leading up to it to free up some points to go in a different direction. We're still going down and taking Frazzled for that increased magnitude of shock. Still taking Maiming Strike to get that increased attack damage, and the attacks have a chance to maim is nice. We're still grabbing Acceleration because the move speed and skill speed it gives is just too good not to get it. Going in, we're going into Sniper. This allows our shots to have more critical hit chances to travel further. Just allows Lightning Arrow to have a higher crit chance on it and to crit more often. Then we're taking Feathered Fletching to have our projectile speed on our quiver to actually apply to damage with bows, adds more DPS to our bow. We're still taking this critical hit cluster, so like Heartbreaking increases our critical damage bonus by a lot, plus that 10 strength is nice. Heart Stopping, 25% increased crit chance, which is really nice, and that 10 intelligence overall. But Struck Through adds a 1% chance to critically hit, which is massive because that applies to our base crit. We're still taking Coming Calamity because we have a Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder, so it's 50% more cold and lightning damage. And then we're going to put 1 point into this Jewel Socket because we can. From there, we swap some stuff around to actually grab Escape Velocity. This is going to give us more evasion rating on the build, and it's also going to give attack speed, which is really nice. But we're going to go from there. We're still taking this Jewel Socket, heading up. We're still taking Enhanced Reflexes for that increased evasion and then increased dexterity, which is really nice. Bestial Skin, because I mean 100% increased evasion rating from our body armor is huge. So we're still taking that, which has a lot more evasion overall to the build. Grabbing Falcon Technique for the increased attack speed per dex, which is really nice. And then we get into some other changes. We're dropping Dynamism now because Dynamism, since we're proccing the Eye of Winter a lot less, we have less uptime of Dynamism. So we're dropping Dynamism and I'm actually taking Staggering Palm, which we're getting a lot more crit damage bonus, critical hit chance because of the nodes previously leading up to Staggering Palm. Then we're still grabbing Kite Runner because the increased projectile speed, damage, and move speed is really nice. Still going into Harmonic Generator for that increased crit chance against shocked enemies is really nice. Then we're still heading up and taking True Strike to get increased crit chance, for the Jugular to get that increased crit damage. Then we're still taking these nodes previously going into Deadly Force because overall this adds 70% increased damage if we got a crit recently, which is absolutely massive to the build and adds a ton of DPS. And on the right side of basically True Strike, we're going to go up and take these 2 points. This way we can go into the Jewel Socket. And then we're going to come down and go into Spectral Ward. This just gives us more maximum energy shield per evasion rating. So overall, it adds more ES into the build since we have a decent amount of evasion rating on our body armor. And then we're going to pull 1 point into this Jewel Socket at the end here. For the Jewels, you basically just want to run an against the Darkness Jewel. This will give us 4% of our damage as extra lightning damage, which is huge. And then for the other ones, are just looking for like crit damage or crit chance, increase attack damage and projectile damage if you can roll on them. If you can get like attack speed or damage with bows, obviously you can interchange those to be really good. And then we're running a time loss one up here because it's really good to kind of affect the notables in range, which is True Strike and for the Jugular. So we're going to get 20% increased attacks damage, 2% increased attack speed, and then 12% increased bonuses gained from our equipped quiver, which is huge and adds a lot of overall DPS to the build. But that basically covers it for the updated version. Overall, the clear feels a lot better. We're doing a lot more boss DPS, and the survivability has went way up. It just feels overall a lot better to play, and it feels a lot comfortable in high T16 breaches and other stuff with our survivability. But obviously, if you guys are enjoying the videos or you like what I'm doing on the channel, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It definitely helps me out a lot. Plus, it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. Again, I should be live on YouTube and Twitch right now. The link for those will be in the description, as well as the comment section of the video. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, night, depending on watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.